Well, welcome back to Bexhill West, and we're in the studio again today, and finally got the laser cutter back into commission. If you remember from a previous video, the tube had failed. I had a replacement one sent out to me and that was faulty, and it's literally taken weeks and weeks and weeks to finally get hold of one that is good and that works. So that's all been fitted and the machine's been calibrated, and I've got a job here lined up. This is, as usual, a bit of an experimental thing, so I don't know how great this is going to work out, but it'll give you an idea of the capability of the machine. So that's a 4 foot by 2 foot piece of, in this case it's MDF, and I'm going to cut something and I'll explain as the video progresses quite what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So let's see if it works. So then what we've got here are the parts for a storage yard cassette system, or rather these bits will make a traverser as part of that system. Now I've seen lots of examples of something similar, and this one on first glance probably looks quite complicated, and yes it is a case of sort of trying to over-engineer something to simplify the end outcome. So what I'll do is I'll pop these bits out the laser cutter, pop them together and sort of show you how I anticipate this might work. Now, as I said, this is experimental, hence I'm using MDF. This isn't really the ideal material, but a bit of 6mm MDF for now I think will serve to prove the concept. For the benefit of those who might be watching this channel for the first time, let me just briefly explain what this is all about. I'm presently involved in a long-term project to build a scale model of Bexhill West station. It's my ambition to build this model to the highest standards that I can achieve, and I'd like for it ultimately one day to go on display somewhere. Now, part of trying to work to a high standard is really, for me, part of the enjoyment of it is learning about all of the different aspects of not just model making but also railway practice. So I've looked at signalling and I've looked at trackwork. But with regard to the model, I've been giving great thought to its complexity, and I recognise that it's going to be a collection of lots of different systems. So in these early stages I'm trying to sort out all of those systems, get my head around them, think how they might work together so that the final outcome hopefully will be greater than the sum of its parts. So what we've got on screen here is the track plan for the model, and I've drawn this up in Templot, and it's overlaid, as you can see, on an old Ordnance Survey map, and you can see that the Templot layout sort of follows the map, really quite precisely. So there you go, you can see Bexhill West is a terminus station, and those platforms are about 750 feet long. It was quite a big station and never really achieved the sort of traffic that it was designed for. But however, it's quite an interesting place, and the architecture of it is really quite beautiful. So as we pan out from the station, we're travelling northwards, and you'll see just to the top of the screen there, which is the east, is the goods yard, and below it in the west some long carriage sidings. Now this leads me to the next problem. What do I do when I reach where it crosses the main road there and heads off towards Sidley and Crowhurst? Now, back in the mists of time, when I was working in 00, I had plans here for a massive return loop. However, given the minimum recommended radiuses for the P4 standards, that's just not going to work. So I've opted for a far more conventional system, which you can see on screen here. Now I'm going to call this the guitar traverser. I don't know quite what the technical term is, but it looks a bit like a guitar to me, so that will do. So for the rest of the video, I shall explain what my take on this relatively traditional idea is, and hopefully there'll be some new ideas that are of interest to some of you. So then, this is the basic traverser unit, and I would propose to build these in panels. This panel is 1100 millimeters long, and that corresponds with the length of one of my cassettes. So the cassettes just drop in. The holes in the top, with a router I've just put a chamfer on, and the idea of that chamfer is just to help the cassette drop into place, and those little mounting bosses underneath, they drop in. So that's the basic principle of the cassette. Now I've chosen 1100 millimeters as a length for two reasons really. Firstly, I can fit 4 coaches on comfortably. Secondly, I think that's about the maximum size to easily be able to pick this up and move it to another slot if required, or put it on a shelf. I don't think there's any need to rotate these, so but it's not impossible to do so. It wouldn't be difficult to pick this up and turn it around, although I'm not sure I'd really want to do it with rolling stock on there. Okay, so that's the basic elements of the traverser section. Let's have a look at the cassettes in a little bit more detail. So this traverser / turntable system comprises of, in the first stage, 3 lightweight boards. Now these boards will have nothing on them. In fact, they have lots of holes in them, and those holes are designed to accept these. Now these are little portable cassette units, so the idea is the rolling stock will be stored on these cassettes, and then the pins on the underside of the cassettes will locate in the holes on the boards, so the stock will be kept securely fixed to the traverser boards, yet simple to lift off and replace and swap in different bits of rolling stock as is required. Now the longer of the cassettes is 1100 millimeters long, and that's designed to fit neatly into a plastic storage box that I've got for the purpose. In fact, it can fit 25 of these cassette units into the storage box, so I'll be able to pack lots of stuff into a relatively small space. And being lightweight, the boards will be nice and easy to transport about. Now then, there is of course nothing new about traversers or cassette systems. Both principles have been around for a very long time, so I claim no originality there. However, there's a couple of ideas that I've incorporated that I've not seen before, and that might be because they're just not very good ideas, or they might add some value to the sort of the gene pool that's out there. So I'll run through them. I'll run through a couple of them. So firstly, and please ignore the fact that these screws are the wrong ones, I'm waiting on the delivery of the correct screws, but the bosses themselves are made with a little fitting, if you like, and that fitting will take a magnetic electrical connector, and on the underside of the traverser at either end will be a similar fitting, a sort of a female version, that will sit underneath. And the idea is that as these two come together, that the electrical connection will be established. So regardless of which way round you put a cassette unit, or indeed wherever you put it on the board, it should make electrical connections straight away. Now I'm also waiting for those electrical connectors, so we'll have to test that out and see if it's any good. That'll be in a future video. But that's the first idea. So there's no connecting wires to any of this thing. You literally can lift these out of the box, drop them on, and they should work. The next idea I was thinking about this, and I was thinking particularly of transportation, packing these things up and storing them. I thought it might be quite nice if there was some sort of protection for the models as they sit on the traverser, and I thought this would be maybe a good idea. So this is just made out of a piece of acrylic. It's yellow because I happen to have a piece of yellow the right size. I'm going to cut some of these in clear acrylic and we'll see how good they are. But basically they slot over. So you could have, whoops, you could have a number of those dropped over, and that will protect the models from, you know, stuff falling on them. I guess if they were made in clear acrylic, there's no reason why they couldn't be kind of like a semi-permanent fixture, help keep the dust off the stuff as well. In this example, the cassette pieces, these support pieces, are 3D printed. There's one of them there, quite straightforward, quite simple, and they bolt to the aluminium angle which is used to form the running rails of the cassette. Now these 3D prints have incorporated into them a semicircular slot, so that when this is all put together they create, well, little cutouts in the top, and the idea behind that is so that multiple cassettes can stand on top of one another. Now this isn't a great example at the moment because there's some little screws through here which I'm going to show you in a bit more detail in a moment, and they're the wrong screws. They're actually 1 millimetre too long, which is a bit annoying. So currently this unit is sat on the traverser and it's actually wobbling, I don't know if you can see that, on the line of these screws that's sticking out by 1 millimetre. I've just had a text message to say that the replacement screws that I was expecting to have arrived before this video are not coming now till later on today. So if you see that wobbling, that's why that is. In fact, let's have a little look. You could just see them maybe just protruding there a little bit. Once I've got the correct screws in fact, if I take this piece which doesn't have the centre strip on and those screws, you can see the... What am I doing? Doesn't fit. Oh, there we go. You can see it fits nice and firmly and snugly on the board. So obviously this is one of the single cassettes that will go onto the turntable unit. Now the turntable we'll talk about in another episode because there's some exciting plans for that. Now in addition to all of that, these were 3D printed. I've been experimenting doing the same thing entirely laser cut. So if I pop this one on here, I've made some simple laser cut bits. I've just folded these up quickly and not very accurately. I need to make a little jig for it, but there we go. We've got the same thing as a laser cut piece. Now that takes obviously a lot less time, it's a lot less expensive than 3D printing, so I think I might go down this route. And again, that bit fits on. So you get the idea of how the single unit is going to work along with the longer ones. Now I've been looking at all sorts of models that others have made and thinking about what's going to happen on the end of these traversers, because obviously we don't want to pick something up and all the stock sort of sail out the end and fall on the floor. I've designed a few complicated, way too complicated versions of little doors that operate on little levers with pins that stick down, so that when you pop this in, the lever pushes the door up, and that's quite a good idea, but seems like a lot of work and very impractical. But it seems everybody else just uses a piece of sponge, so I think that's the way I'm going to go. In fact, my next job after I've finished filming this clip is to laser cut some foam and see if we can engineer a good little foam stopper that can be put in the end. Now I don't anticipate that being needed when the railway is in operation, but certainly for lifting things on and off of the board or storing them away, then some form of end protection would be a really good idea. Okay, so looking at the unit from the end here, we can see the aluminium running rails, and hopefully the camera's picking up. We've got a separate strip of acrylic plastic material down the centre. Now that allows for a proper flange gap to allow for the P4 wheel sets to run up and down, but it's actually higher than the surface of the running rail slightly, and that's to make it easier to put rolling stock on. Now I'm in the studio at the moment and I haven't got any of my rolling stock here, so later on I shall get a little video clip and post it on the top to show you how the stock sits on. It's quite a handy sort of railing mechanism. Now at the extreme ends of this there are little magnets embedded into this centre strip, so that, let's imagine this is the end of the traverser and a locomotive has come up here ready to sort of disengage from its train. It will be able to do so via magnetic coupling that will uncouple, and the locomotive can draw off and go and turn around on the turntable, leaving the carriages behind. Now I'm going to do a video on the coupling I intend to use and the magnets and stuff, so we'll deal with that another time. So then, this is the cassette system as I have it at present. Now, except the ideas of the cassette and the traverser stuff, none of that is new. It's quite well established and there's lots for me to read on the internet, and I've been able to draw all the best of the ideas that I've seen. However, some of those ideas which I've not seen, such as the electrical connectors and so on, I'm just wondering whether they're good ideas or not. So maybe you're someone's had some experience of that yourselves, in which case I'd like to know, good feedback or poor feedback. If you've had problems with it, then let me know, and then I can come back to that and explore that in more depth. Anyway, so that's it. I'd hope to finish this video with all of the cassettes built and laid out on the traverser and have it all looking wonderful. However, those screws that I mentioned that should have arrived yesterday, turns out they're now not coming till next week. So rather than delay this video whilst I do the final assembly of all the bits and pieces, I'll leave it here and we'll return to it in a future video. Now before I go, I'm going to leave you with some footage, rather fun footage, that a viewer sent me from their restaurant experience whilst visiting Prague, and well, I'll see what you make of it. It's quite good fun. Anyway, till next time, take care. Cheerio.
I'm getting it, sure.